Yeah, thank you for that. As mentioned, I am Antonio Kaplan and lead the global finance primitives at Ripple. Here and very excited to talk to you today about a project that's very near and dear to my heart. So the decentralized exchange, otherwise known as the DEX, is something that has been around on the XRPL ledger for a long time, and I've always had this feeling that we can get more out of this. Really love this thing. So what I'm going to take you through today is how we can actually use this to power our next generation payments infrastructure. I'm going to show you a couple of new features. I think when we just had a presentation on the DEX, we're going to go into some of those new fancy ones as far as permission domains, what this can actually add to our lives. So I'm really excited. So to start, who's heard this problem before of cross-border payments is not the easiest thing? I think we've all, if you haven't heard this, it's kind of one of our things here, right? Yeah, so I mean, what are the real challenges with cross-border payments, right? I mean, a lot of this, is around like it's fragmented infrastructure. It's slow, right? There's expensive. There's lack of transparency. There's a lot of people involved, and I always think a lot of people in this chain. There's reasons why these things take this much time, because people make money off the inefficiency. This is what happens, right? Our goal here is to actually see how we can simplify this. We can bring this on chain, and we can actually make this work. So what's really the opportunity here that we have? I mean, like, imagine a world in which you're able to actually start to do some of the stuff where payments did not take days, they were actually instant, right? Low cost. I mean, who doesn't want low cost? My favorite thing in the world is cheap, fast, good. You've heard this? You can only have 2 of them. I always love it. It's like the cap theorem thing, but I want cheap, fast, and good, right? This is what I want. And this is what I think we can get. So this resiliency, this always being on, the fact that you don't have people who are like, hey, guess what, our payments, it's Sunday, there's no more payments, right? That's not how these things need to work. To meet the modern demands of our lives and actually like build this next generation, this is what we want. I hope we all see this and like, I want that thing, right? Now, how do we actually get this thing? So another part is like, what's the actual addressable market size? Again, like payments is a big thing. Now, what I'm starting to do here is not just to show payments opportunity, but to show what the decentralized exchange is, because I feel like that a lot of what these things are used for in the past has really not been for, I don't know what to say, but like infrastructure. It's really been for how do I get a meme coin. Now, again, these are good things, but from my perspective, the opportunity to move from centralized exchanges to decentralized exchanges, I love that. Like, it's not your keys, not your coins. This is what happens. This is the beauty of what we can have a decentralized exchange. Now, looking back to this, I was trying to create a formula, right? Which is like, how do we compare what this nice world might look like with a decentralized exchange? And originally we started with like liquidity costs, right? I mean, that's the thing. You're not going to have as high liquid. If you compared this to, I'm going to go to an FX broker. It's going to be cheaper, right? I was starting to think about this, like, is that really a fair comparison? And I don't think it is. If you think about when we're adding the parts of this, is like, yes, there will be some slippage, but there'll be spread, but slippage is, as far as like, it's not instant. So when you have instant, imagine, again, this example, if I have a volatile asset, let's say I have, Colombian pesos. What I'm actually not calculating into this is the amount of time that it takes when I wire this money in for it to do. So if I have to have this money on my books for a couple days, that's not free again. This is I'm holding a position in another asset. I have to hedge this, right? So the time, it's really there. And then once I do this, I have to off-ramp it. I guess this, like especially in hard-to-reach corridors, that's not free. It's hard to do. It's hard to actually do regulated third-party payments. It's not an easy thing to do. And those who can do it in each of these corridors, they charge you for it. So for me, this is the problems that we're actually trying to go up against. This is our opportunity. Another thing here that we want to start to show, right, is the multi-asset stablecoin. I know that US dollar denominated stablecoins have been the kings, right? I think that there's always been this niche market for these other denomination stablecoins. I'm going to try to show you why I think that this is a use case that's evolving. Again, like combining instant settlement with third-party payouts on the DEX, I think that this is where the magic's going to come from. So here's the solution of what you actually have to do, right? So I think the XRP ledger is a stronger solution for payments. I don't know if this is controversial or not. I think it's a stronger solution for payments than it is for trading. There's inherent latency. Like, are you going to be faster than a centralized exchange? Are you going to have sub-millisecond latency? No. You're not going to, so why try? For me, payments is the use case. If I compare it to high-frequency trading, you're not going to win. If I compare it to the other side, which is slow settlement FX markets, slow settlement payments, I think it's fast for that. The other part that I think is potentially novel here, right, is on-chain FX. So not just doing pure crypto to pure crypto. Again, if I'm trying to do payments use cases, for now. In the future, when we have a purely digital world in which everybody is able to spend their assets, I think that this might be different. But for now, having high-quality stablecoins with, again, the trusted part of this, I think that this is a really key part for institutional adoption. As much as we all love decentralized exchanges, why do people use centralized exchanges? Right? It's simple, is that if you are a low-risk, big enterprise with a lot of money, you don't like losing money. You don't actually like introducing compliance risk, legal risk, counterparty risk. So what we have here, I'm going to go over some new features, but I think permission domains. I take this a little bit of my journey with these, but I think that this is really one of the key features that makes not only the XRP ledger different and the DEX different, but I think it makes this a good use case for payments. So last one, which I think is really important, and I think this is kind of cool, right? Worldwide payout network. So this might seem like, oh, of course we want that. But if you think about the difference in a US dollar in USDT, USDC, or USD, there's a nice part of this, which is I have the stable asset, which we like. I also have the settlement piece, which we also like, and I think that this is what we've known and loved, is we have the settlement part, right? The part that I think that we're missing, though, is because I own those things, I don't automatically out of the box get a payout. So I can't give it, I can give you the stable coin. I can't convert back into US dollar and then actually pay somebody. I can't get a Mexican stable coin, deliver it to somebody in Mexico. So for me, creating this permission network where we have a variety of different stable coins, multi-denomination, and for being in this network, since it's trusted, you know who you're dealing with, you also get the right for having the asset to actually do a third-party payout. I think that that's pretty compelling. I think that this is novel. So we're going to go over some of the XRPL features that I think enable this. So I think that a bunch that we've talked about before being the DEX. So I don't know if anybody knows this, that XRP Ledger was the first decentralized exchange on-chain. I don't know if anybody knows this, but it is. And one of the things that I think's been, it's been sad and why I love working on this is because I think that not only do we not get enough value out of this, but we're not in the top 10 in volume in trading. I think that we can change this, right? And this is some of the reasons why. So the other parts, again, like the AMM, which was introduced a couple years ago, I think that this is a key part. Again, we're focusing on having the decentralized network. Focusing the next part is on liquidity, right? I think that this is another part that everybody hyper-focuses on is I've been described as this is the oil, this is the gasoline that actually makes the flywheel here go. You need this thing, right? And again, AMMs is just one part of this, is how do we incentivize participants in this market to be providing liquidity to be able to make this flywheel go. Now, the next ones I think are where we're starting to get a little different here, and there's not other decentralized exchanges who do this. And this is the part that, it's taken me a while to think of. Originally, I'm like, is a permission DEX a feature or a bug? I'm like, in some ways, I'm like, it took me a little bit of time to be convinced, because in some ways, I'm like, it's nice that it's permission and you get to know, but isn't that kind of the point of crypto and blockchain, is crypto and creating this? I think the reason here, though, is also look back at why don't institutional, real companies who are in traditional finance, why don't they use these decentralized exchanges? I think that this is a key part. So one of the pieces that we're having here is combining these three allows us to know who the participants are. You can get your KYC, you can get your KYB. You can actually add all of these things, but we can still have that decentralized nature where there's less intermediaries in between. That's the hope here. We're going to go through, again, right now, I was primarily talking about, we have the native tokens. Obviously, we have XRP, our native token on our ledger. The issued assets is the other part that I think that we're talking about here for this purpose, for payments. Again, creating stablecoins, IOUs. The next part, though, I think is where we'll talk about at the end, but I think that this can get exciting as well, which is how do we actually do the non-fungible tokens? And I don't mean, again, the stickers and monkeys here. I do mean the actual business functions out of these things where you have non-fungible assets, tokenized real-world assets on chain. I think that there can be some really exciting things here. So we'll go quickly through the end-to-end flow. So again, what do you actually need? Again, simplifying this so we can make sure that what we're looking at here is again going to be like this separating these concerns here. So again, on one side, we actually have a sender. I use the flow here. I have RLUSD going in. So fundamental problem here, you have somebody who wants to actually send something to somebody with a third-party payout. So again, within the overall XRP ledger, the overall XRP DEX, we've created a permission domain here. And again, I see this as like a private room per se, or like a place where you're making sure that all of the participants in here are actually good actors. They're in the system. You can have trust in the same way that you do with a centralized exchange. This is why you go to them, because you don't have to know all of their participants, but you can actually be sure that somebody else has made sure that there's no money laundering, there's nothing nefarious happening. It's all above board. You can have your compliance team happy with this. So the main part here, again, is this order book piece, right? So I think we've talked about this a little bit, but creating, again, this tokenized asset. Again, in this case, I'm trying to show Colombian pesos. I think when you actually see the path here with a liquidity provider, the key things that I'm looking at here are what again, going a little bit later on what actually is going to make this thing really sing. But the ability to have really solid, fast, not only like rails to the actual payout, but to be able to actually have really good mint redeem functions. This is something that's actually going to be critical. So if this world that I'm trying to paint here, we have a variety of assets for the ability to buy this with you have the liquidity on there. Imagine this marketplace where if you wanted to do a payout in pesos, you just buy a peso. You have the ability out of the box to be able to do that. I think that this is pretty compelling, and I think that this is something that you cannot do on other decentralized exchanges. And I think that a lot of the challenges, again, are going to be around not just liquidity, but it's going to be around this, with this walled garden. You're actually making sure that the people and the participants in there, we have success of it. So I went through a little bit of a case study here. Again, trying to say when the sender wants to initiate this, you create the quote. I think you guys know this flow. You go through the permission DEX. You actually execute these atomic swaps, which are beautiful. We can make sure that when you actually want to send something, you don't get halfway through and then have to do this refunds again. A lot of payments is around edge cases and actually around like, how do I fix when the unhappy path these things don't go well? For me, this is the part when another one of the beauties here is these atomic swaps where we can make sure that when something's go through, my intention is to actually send it to the end payer that actually goes through. So this, I think, is an important part. So as much as I love, and I'm an optimist by nature, what do we need to actually make this work? What do we need to make this real? So, I love the flywheel here. It gets overused as a metaphor, but I really do like it. I think it's this concept of that, like, as you're starting to build things, it just makes other parts of it better. For me, like, liquidity as one of the drivers of this. This is always with this cat and mouse. I love this cold start problem, if you guys have heard this. It's like that, I have people in a network, I have content, but I have nobody that's there to watch it. Liquidity is really the driver of this, right? As long as you have the assets actually being able to move around here, it starts unleashing the next possibility. So what do you actually unleash? For me, building on those developer use cases. This is why we're here, right? This is Apex, is we're focusing on how do we actually build value chains, solve people's problems within the ecosystem, right? And at the bottom, again, the cost structure. This has to make sense commercially. If it doesn't make sense commercially, this is a toy, this is a hobby. This is not a hobby. This is our job. This is how we actually make things work. So again, like keys to adoption, this is nothing new, but deep liquidity, right? This is the thing that as soon as you have this, I'm excited to see what else we can do with this, but once you have actually this, again, it makes this payment cycle be able to flow. The permission pools with verified counterparties. This is another piece that, again, going through back some of those XRP amendments that are upcoming, I think that this is something unique. This is something that I've looked at, like, why do we actually need this permission DEX? It goes back to that we're unique in that we actually have this thing. When we have this thing, we can start to do the enterprise. We can start to do this actual B2B real businesses. Again, custody, this is another key part of this. Again, crypto, we have some unique problems here. Beauty and problems here is that you actually, like, they're your keys. You lose your keys, your money's gone, right? So having a really tight interaction with the custody, and again, going back to what the custody role plays in here besides that, is with the DEX, that's where your API keys are as well. So when you're actually signing the transactions, you sign orders, you actually sign movement, they all actually get through done for the key. So the custody is a really key part here, and making sure that we have good access to this is another one of those key levers. Again, like yield, we have to make this, got to make who are those market makers that are magic in this little slot that we're like, they're just going to be there and they're just going to do this. Again, this is what we have with the AMM. We have other opportunities, but creating value for every partner in the chain. I'm going to take you through in a second all of the partners in the chain, because I think it's good to see the ecosystem. But again, like anchoring on the fact that this has to be uniquely valuable for all of the participants, so they're just not going to do it. This is a business again. This isn't for just like, hey, this is a hobby. Let's see how this grows. But for us, let's start with the first one, which is for me the problem part. So the senders are the ones who are driving this business. They're the ones with the desire, the intent to actually do something. So what actually they want to do, right? They're trying to send money to an end recipient, and in this case, again, we can do the business to business, we can do the treasury use cases. I think that all of those are useful for me. I think the third-party payout part, it's the hard nut to crack, which is how do I make sure that I'm trying to pay not only myself or a company, I'm actually trying to pay a bunch of different people. It's not an easy thing to do. And I think that managing this secure network, having the security, have this always on 24/7, 365 network, this is what we want. If you have this thing, I think the value prop from a sender's perspective, if I had this, they're like, yeah, I'd love that. So let's go into what's in it for everybody else, because I think that that's what makes it. The demand side here is very clear. Payments for trillions of dollars. We know that there's a need. Cross-border payments are a thing. They're not going to go away. We know that the senders will want to do this. Now, what are the other people in the system? For me, a big part of this is, again, having high quality stablecoins in multiple denominations. I think that this is a really important part. What do they get out of this? They get the same thing as anybody who creates stablecoin out of it, right? You get to be able to hold capital on your books, issue stablecoins, drive adoption. And I think this is another part of how we actually integrate this DEX, private DEX with the main one. Having publicly issuable stablecoins will allow us to not just create liquidity and actually create demand within this little network. I think bridging this with RLUSD, bridging this with other publicly enabled stablecoins, is I think what it's really going to drive the value for the entire ecosystem. Again, receivers, payout partners, they want flow, right? They make money off of this. If they can do this at the same, if it's easy, the bar is the same, they can do this cheaper through this. Again, they want to be making money. Market makers, again, it's an interesting business, but market makers' jobs is not just to make profit on trades. It's really to provide this liquidity in there. So creating the incentives for them. Again, if you're, imagine a use case here where we have, I don't know if you remember, there used to be like a lot of different, when you go on a centralized exchange, there'd be a lot of different pairs for all USD stablecoins, and there'd be a different market for each one. It'd be kind of like, in my opinion, if like for every state in America, you had a different kind of dollar. It's like I'd have a California dollar and a Texas dollar, right? It's like, that's nice, but I just want one to be the same. And that's kind of, for me, this is the fragmented liquidity. For me, if we can kind of put this in a place where there's one centralized place to go for on-chain FX, again, I think that, again, the flywheel part here, but if we can actually make this valuable part, there's a reason you'd want to do this, right? I would want to make sure that for a market maker, the factors, what makes it valuable to do, it's a combination of spread. It's also a combination of actually how much flow is actually going through. So we can bring the flow. The demand is here. We just actually have to make this, again, just make this valuable. So the last one, which is really important to me, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but when I first started working on this, I really thought about this permission DEX thing, right? And I'm like, look, I'm an XRP ecosystem person, right? If this isn't creating some value, it's great for Ripple. It's my day job. It's nice. I want this to be generating value for the ecosystem. So for me, I think that first of all, the DEX is built for payments. It really is. And I think that you can look at this as really a feature. I think that not a lot of other DEXs, they can kind of do this. They're built for trading. This one really is ideal for payments. I think that that's pretty cool. Enabling institutional adoption. This is another part of just being part of Ripple ecosystem. We have the deep ties into the institutional pieces. Being able to make sure that we're continuing on this path, I think that this is the strength. It's being the adult in the room, which I've heard a lot of saying, but it's also making sure that we're bridging the gap between the traditional finance systems. We're partnering with them, with banks, with those rails, providing an on-chain ecosystem as well. Again, the public stablecoin is really the thing that I think is interesting here. Imagine if I had everything locked into this little ecosystem and I'm creating liquidity for it. It's it's great, but you can't access that. For me, driving the demand, if you want to enter this, we have to have XRP in the flow. We have to have RLUSD in the flow. If we had a Euro stablecoin that was also publicly issued, being able to bring that from external places into this ecosystem, that's where this actually drives the flywheel and demand. If I needed XRP to start in this flow, demand's obviously going to go up. If I want to get in this, you got to buy a ticket to be able to get in the, in the door. That's a ticket that you actually have to get. So, look, let's just imagine this world now in which everything I said is true. I know it's a big jump, But if we just created that and it just solved Ripple's problem for payments, again, that'd be nice, right? I think we can do more. So what I've been thinking a lot lately is this, is like, let's just say future we do this and accomplish this and everything works out well. What do we do next? What other value could this drive? So I think that this is where some cool things are. So collateralized lending is pretty cool. So just to give you an example of what this part is, imagine if, again, capital efficiency here, you're a company who wants to be able to put through 20 million, 30 million. I see this a lot in startups. It's like you can make this unit economics make sense up to a limit, and as soon as you start hitting the bounds of actually the cash that you have on hand, cash starts becoming really important. If you can't actually move this through, what you actually want to do is go through people like prime brokers. What they do, and actually what you can do here, you can deposit assets so you will not have to liquidate them. You can actually get loans that collateralizes off that. So if I wanted to do $5 million in trading and payments, if I had $1 million in Bitcoin, $1 million in XRP, and I was able to hold that without actually having to sell it and to trade it, and then being able to be lend off that, and then having the settlement process where you can actually recycle it. This is a really, really strong thing. And again, this is why prime brokers exist. This is their business model. I think being able to do this on chain, I think this is pretty cool. And for me, if you have the payments network with the rails, this is what OTC desks cannot do. They can have FX. They can do this quickly. They can even give you some collateral. They don't do third-party payouts. So for me, combining these things together, I think this is pretty cool. This is a new model. The other part for me, so I like, and it's a boring thing, but treasury management. This is a big piece of it. But if you think about any multinational corporation, if you denominate, let's say you're denominated in US dollars, every single time that you actually have to, like, hey, I'm trying to buy Mexican pesos, you have to be able to hedge your accounting. You have to be able to do mark-to-market accounting. A lot of these complicated things, there's not a lot of solutions that exist that do both crypto well and fiat well. For me, this is some of the things that once we actually have this flywheel doing, you'll be able to run your treasury management system that are in these native stablecoins in these countries off the back of this, be able to do your rebalancing. This is cool stuff. The last part for me, tokenized real-world assets. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, like NFTs, I love these things. And for me, where I think that this can eventually go is these real-world assets of tokenized securities. When I have this liquidity, I have this actually like approved network that I know my participants in here, I start to be able to leverage a lot of these other use cases, which become pretty cool. I've always had this idea of like being able to aggregate your wealth in one place, being able to say when I can, world where I can tokenize my assets, I can be able to put these things together and actually create these liquidity pools. And one of these other pieces I've always thought is like, could I pay groceries in frequent flyer miles? Like, why not, right? And I think that this is the case that you can start to get here, right? Which is that like, if I have my assets and my wealth in a place where I can tokenize them, I can bring them on chain, I have a secure place to be able to exchange them, I start to think some of these things are actually not that far off. So this is what I'm excited about in the future. I hope you all at least learned something here, and I hope you all enjoy this. But yeah, I think this is something. This is a new world. So thank you.